about to Pavlov's dog my way into writing. Wow, I just sprayed the shit out of myself with this thing. I got it in my eye. So now my eye is stinging. Fantastic way to start the evening. It's also on my glasses. So, excuse me while I clean these. Thank God I obsessively keep glasses cleaner cloths in my pocket. Did you guys know that's a personality trait of mine? If you ever wear glasses and you need a glasses cleaner cloth, I have a very large variety on my person at all times, and this is only one pocket worth of glasses cleaner cloth. Hi guys. I have been doing a lot of writing, which is fantastic because I realized that as a writer, the more writing I do, the better I get at writing. Working frequently on my projects is actually something that brings me immense joy. Right now we are at the 3rd of February, and I've worked on my book pretty much every single day for the last 2 weeks. So the book is currently at like 40 something chapters and very long. It's over 180,000 words now. I was thinking about the structure of Seventh Virtue, which is the book I've been working on. It's an adult contemporary fantasy novel about a guy who is tasked with saving his ex-boyfriend, who may or may not be a bird and may or may not come from a family that relates to the 7 deadly sins and the 7 holy virtues. I wonder why it's called Seventh Virtue. I was thinking about the structure the last couple of days and I was wondering, how did I write a book that is this long? This is not my first rodeo with a book that is this long. My longest book is 197,000 words. It is book 3 of Fostered, which is the parent series that Seventh Virtue comes from, video linked on everything about Fostered. The story of book 3 is very different to the story of Seventh Virtue. Book 3 of Fostered, which is called Resisted, I think, I wrote in 2015, in May of that year. It took me pretty much about a year to actually complete the draft. Probably 6 months of that was actually writing. It's my favorite book that I've written just because it's very fun, and we get a Zuko-esque redemption arc with Lonan. Can't complain about that. So it was the most fun I had writing, but it also presented a challenge that I'd never experienced in my writing before, where I actually quit this series because I couldn't figure out how to finish this book. It had gotten quite long, like over 100,000 words. I'd gotten to this point that was so exciting. I knew exactly what I needed to happen. I loved the dynamics. The tension was great. We were getting Reeve and Lonan, who were arch enemies, actually coming together, working together. It was fantastic. We just found out they were siblings. There was a lot of drama and everything was where I wanted it to be. And then one day I went to write and it stopped working. Couldn't figure out why. I was really young at this time. I started this book when I was in grade 8 and I was 13. And when this issue happened, it was October of 2015. Am I gonna have to give up on Fostered? It really bugged me because these characters were important to me. Lo and behold, I'm still writing with them years and years later. I am 21 now. 14-year-old me really couldn't understand what the problem was. And I still don't really know what the problem is now looking back. It could have been that I kind of veered off in the wrong direction with a subplot and it kind of overwhelmed me, or because I was at this high point I was looking forward to, something just sort of switched and I just couldn't write it. When I eventually came back to the book a couple of months later, I ended up taking a much more drastic turn by adding a character, and that propelled the book, and that's why it ended up being so long, because I ended up writing basically another book within the book. I remember thinking, this is quite like a disconnected book. At some points you can kind of tell where things may or may not have gone downhill just a little bit. But with Seventh Virtue, it's so different because I feel like this is such a contained work. Yeah, there are probably scenes, chapters that aren't necessary, but in terms of the arc and like the subplots and everything that happens, everything is connected in a causal chain, which is fantastic. One thing causes the next, which causes the next, which causes the next. It was actually really important to me that the causal chain was retained in Seventh Virtue because it's so plot heavy that I needed it to. If not, I would start forgetting things and losing track, right? But I still don't know how this book ended up being so long. I have no idea. I'm looking back on it. I'm really looking forward to rereading it because I think that might be insightful. So speaking of things I used to do when I was 14, guess who's being a band student as of late? I am in my final semester of my BA in creative writing. Please don't tell my professors, but sometimes I draft my book during class. This is something I used to do when I was in grade 9. I would bring pieces of paper to class and I would draft my book by hand while I was supposed to be listening to a science lecture. I'm gonna say it's the neurodivergence. Okay, it's the neurodivergence. I've been doing that in the last week. I've been taking my notebook with me and I've been handwriting out scenes. And there are scenes like from really iconic moments of Fostered that I never remembered were actually written longhand. For some reason, that's like really cool to me that some of the most important parts of this series just happen on a piece of notebook paper that I like crushed in my bag. But it's been very nostalgic for me the last couple of days to not only be writing a book that reminds me so much of one that was my favorite thing that I've ever written, but also that I have been emulating the process. So writing in class and also writing longhand on notebook paper. I spilled water on my notebook, but I didn't want to replace it. So I ironed out the paper as best as I could. This is some of the longhand sections of Seventh Virtue in my school notebook. That's been fantastic. I've written probably 2,000 words longhand over the last couple of days, which has been very fun. Not for me afterward because I have terrible handwriting, but thankfully I can read my bad handwriting. But it's also been nostalgic to have to go back and transcribe my written work into my document because that was something I did all the time when I was a teenager. So the next sequence of Seventh Virtue is a dinner sequence. And I have this pretty tightly plotted, not like the actual dinner sequence, but like what happens after, what interrupts it, sort of the next issue that propels us toward the next bit of the book. I haven't written a chapter in Harrison's point of view in a while. I have two narrators in Seventh Virtue, Harrison and Reeve. Harrison hasn't shown up in quite some time because I don't know what's going on with his plot. So instead of like trying to figure that out, I've just been writing the subplot that is working. And to be honest, it doesn't really make sense to jump into Harrison's point of view because he's very isolated right now. He's not talking to anybody. He's in a room by himself. It's not like he would contribute anything. So I've shifted the last about 10,000 words just into Reeve's point of view. Before I really solidified that I wanted Reeve's point of view solely in this book, I had obviously written a majority of it with just Harrison. So now I think Reeve is kind of getting her solo screen time that Harrison got. Last night, I was tired and I wrote a scene that is really intense and I am not sure how it turned out. So I'm gonna take a second to read it with Microsoft Liam. One of my Tumblr followers asked me if I can show you how I do it. So if you are somebody who wants to read their work or get somebody to read it to you, in my case, and you love audiobooks and you have Word, I'm gonna show you how I read my work. Welcome to my realistically messy desk. I'm sure other programs have this, but to my knowledge, you can only access the Microsoft Voices in Word, or you can do it by exporting your work to a PDF and opening it in Edge. So if you don't have Word and you have Microsoft Edge, you can do this in Edge. So I'm not showing you the chapter I'm currently working on, but this is chapter 34, which is like 10 chapters ago, called Wound Within. As you can see, it's a Harrison and Lonan chapter, which is fun. So I just have the document pulled up. I have added the accessibility feature up in the top left corner right next to small caps. This is the button you're gonna wanna look for. I'm pretty sure that you can activate it so it shows up in this ribbon. So what I very simply do is get what I want to read. I click where I want it to start and then I hit play. Jesus Christ. Harrison says once he returns to his room after... Do you hear that? The voices, to my knowledge, the only way to actually change them is to change the region, at least when you're in Word. When you're in Microsoft Edge, there's like a drop-down list of all the different voices. If you know, you know, I love Microsoft Liam, who is the male Canadian voice. In this case, you can see the word count and you can see the region. It's set to United States. In order to get Microsoft Liam, I'm gonna select all and I'm gonna change it back to Canada. So it's still set to female. So to make it Microsoft Liam, I just set it to male. So it should be Microsoft Liam now. Jesus Christ. Harrison says once he returns to his room after a brisk morning walk. There he is. You can change the speed, but because I neurodivergent Gen Z, I listened to it on like 2 times speed. Hey guys, we've made some progress and I finished a chapter. I realized that I'd been working on this chapter since the beginning of the month and now it's like past the middle of the month and I was like, why did it take me so long? And then I realized it's because this chapter is almost 9,000 words long and I was like, oh, checks out. Let's read a couple excerpts. This is in Reeve's point of view. This chapter is called Outside Line. It was chapter 44 and My Neighborhood is Loud. The first excerpt is in her point of view and it's a little bit more serious because the last couple chapters have been serious. But this excerpt is Reeve at dinner, and she doesn't want to be there. She is not really in a good headspace. She's dissociating a little bit, and so she ends up like really focused and thinking about places she could vacation. This bit is her thinking about what she and Lonan, who is her older brother, had planned to do when they were children. When they were kids, Reeve and Lonan talked about visiting a hotel with a pool. They didn't care which one or how long they'd stay. They'd never been to one before and thought it would be fun to blend in with the vacationing families. She'd seen families milling in precariously tiled pools on television vacations, so they could do that too. And they'd run the continental breakfast up to their room at dawn, make fresh waffles over and over and over until their mouths soared, order room service whenever they wanted. Something that simple was all that mattered. That was a cute one. This is another Reeve and Lonan excerpt. We don't get to see them being siblings really in this book all that much, despite it being nearly 200,000 words. So the moments that we do are kind of precious to her, but this is Reeve kind of reflecting on finding comfort in her older brother. When they were younger and Reeve woke up in the middle of the night from a nightmare, she'd tiptoe to her brother's room and slip soundlessly onto the floor beneath the bed where he slept. In the morning, she'd wake up and their places would always be switched. Her tucked neatly into his bed, him turned into the bed frame, pretending to be asleep. She knew that every time she went to him for midnight comfort, she disrupted his sleep, had him stay up all night watching over her like a guardian angel who hadn't signed up for duty. But they never spoke about it, even when they ran into each other at breakfast. He had every opportunity to, while he slid a grapefruit open and she retrieved Raisin Bran from the cupboard's top shelf. She knew what he'd do if she did. Deny, insist it was fine, deny again. So it was their secret, his and hers and his. She knew he'd never ask if she ran to him in the middle of the night, which is a lot sadder in this context because I like torturing my characters. The last one is actually in a chapter that I'm working on right now. Chapter 45, we're back in Harrison's point of view, thank God, because I've spent the last 22,000 words in Reeve's point of view and it's been emotionally difficult. I have an entire video talking about it. And then there's Lonan's face. How well does he know this face? The faint shimmer of a scar above his eyebrow from a childhood accident, something vague involving a tricycle and a felled cypress. And then his hair, dark like Humilitas's feathers under moonlight. Humilitas is the bird. The only thing Harrison is certain Lonan likes about himself. The ends are jagged from where Harrison trimmed it. And what should he feel knowing Lonan in all this time hasn't bothered to fix it? And his eyes, damp in this sunless room, but still blunt in their blueness. A crest of tide in a man's body, this private ocean for him and whoever looks back. That's the gayest thing Harrison has ever said. On all accounts, Lonan is the most beautiful thing Harrison's seen. The book is almost at 191,000 words. My longest book is 197, so it looks like this is going to be my longest book, which is, you know, not what I was intending. Hi guys. I can't even express to you how close I am to finishing this book. I'm at 190 something thousand words in the manuscript. I'm getting into some drama like action territory. I am not an action writer. I was struggling a lot with the end of Seventh Virtue yesterday in particular because it is a bit more actiony. I used to be better with this stuff in terms of plot. It's funny how as you develop as a writer, you can also lose skills simultaneously. And one of the skills I lost because I wasn't really developing it while I was developing my other skills was writing action, like heavy action and fight scenes and conflict and bloodshed. I'm not good at writing that stuff anymore, but it's an integral part of Seventh Virtue, unfortunately. And because of that, I was really struggling with this book yesterday. It was feeling like shit, basically, about where this book was at, and I'm still on rocky terms, which is unfortunate because this is a book I'm writing for myself to be fun, but obviously it's not going to be fun in games at all times, especially when I get to parts that I'm not great at writing. Yesterday, I basically begged my sister, like, please, can we do some brainstorming for Seventh Virtue? And really, what brainstorming entails is me talking out loud, and it ended up working out quite well because it reminded me that I had already figured out what I wanted to do with the end of the book and for some reason forgot all about it and stressed myself out for no reason. Fantastic. With that said, I spent the last bit of yesterday mapping out the very end of the book. I took some time yesterday to write out basically an outline for the last part of the book that I'm going to try very hard to stick to. I have been following like a loose outline in terms of plot points, but I kind of divulged and went on a bit of a tangent, which is a great tangent. I loved it very much. However, I'm at this point where I don't want to write any more tangents because this book is 190,000 words. I haven't done a chapter by chapter outline in probably years, but I decided the only way I'm probably going to stick to the plan is if I like break this down into chapters. I've basically took about 10 minutes yesterday just to sort through beat by beat what needs to happen till the end of the book so that I don't go off on another tangent. I have 3 more points basically to hit in this chapter. Then after I realized, okay, that's probably enough for the chapter, I split the rest of the notes into chapter 46. So just going down the causal chain of events. Okay, so if this happens and this happens and this happens, we're gonna have a chapter break. This naturally has to happen. That led me to about 48 chapters to finish this book. Something that I haven't done in a long time is update my reverse outline, which is just something that I keep on Scrivener so that I can keep track of the book. I don't have the best short-term memory when it comes to remembering stuff that happens in my book. The last time I outlined a chapter was chapter 38. I already got a really solid idea for a scene. I was just sitting around and it kind of came to me. Funnily, it's already an offshoot, something that I told myself I wasn't going to do with the outline where I'm straying from it, but I have managed to kind of like shuffle it under another scene that was supposed to happen. A couple of days ago, I was at a writing group and I managed to do a lot of writing, actually. I thought it was bad, like awful. I have been writing for nearly a decade, and sometimes it's impossible even for me to tell if my writing is just terrible. So we did a couple of sprints as a group, and I was literally telling the group, oh my god, this is the worst thing I've ever written, but I just need to get out of this scene as soon as possible. That's one of my techniques. If something is just sticking way too much, then what's best is just to move on as fast as possible. And I'm not really a non-linear writer, so I just like to kind of barrel through it. Funnily enough, the next day I reread it and I was like, this is totally fine. Like, it's exactly what I was hoping for, but I think in the moment, it wasn't even that I was insecure. I just genuinely believed that, oh my god, this is bad, but I'm giving myself the permission to write it. And this is why I recommend that you do that if you're a perfectionist, because you can surprise yourself. I have a bit of an unrealistic goal. I am on break right now from school, and I do have to work on some school assignments, but I think I can finish this book in the next week. My goal was to hopefully have it done by March. I did have a goal to hit 190,000 words by March 1st. It's February 18th, and I hit that like yesterday or the day before. Whew, so cold. The last time I updated this vlog was a week ago. I realized that my goal was to finish it within the week, and I forgot about that, so I don't know if we'll actually hit that goal. The last time I talked to you, I was summarizing the book in my Scrivener file. I was writing out 1-sentence summaries for all of the scenes. But while I was doing that, I realized that I'd forgotten to do something after NaNoWriMo was over, so I wrote a bunch of chapters in NaNoWriMo. It was like 25 chapters or something. What I do in Scrivener is I usually have a 1-sentence summary of the entire chapter. You know how like Netflix does summaries of episodes? That's what I do. I forgot to do that for like all of the NaNoWriMo chapters. So that took a little bit longer than I expected, and after that point I didn't really draft 7th Virtue all that much. We've increased about 3K since I last talked to you. I just ended up hyperfixating on different projects, and I wasn't really expecting that in reading break. I ended up rereading a novel I wrote in 2019 called Mothwork. I got very caught up in my interest for that. It was like special interest territory. I am still pretty wrapped up in that land, like the literary elements of Lonan and Harrison's relationship. I do have the goal of finishing this book before March still. Chapter 45 I finished, and it ended up being about 5,000 words. Really good chapter. I ended up calling it Vicious Salvation. And then chapter 46 I have a plan for. Chapter 47 and then chapter 48 I have planned. But I'm not sure I'm actually even going to need all of these chapters. I might be able to finish the book in this next chapter. I haven't written a Reeve chapter in a while. I'm not sure if I will actually by the time I finish this book. So right now I'm just stuck in Harrison's head, which is fun because he's dying. It's a lot of fun to write. I mean, not for him, but fun for me. So I've been sticking in his head. I'm going to do 46 in his head, and I have a really solid idea for what I need this first scene to be. It's like 3 o'clock right now. I have a meeting at 3:30, so I won't be able to write much, but I'm going to write in the interim. Because like I said, I was working on like my hyperfixation project for like moth work. I'm thinking of writing a novella in Harrison's point of view, and this is going to be a diversion from the theme of this vlog. Mothwork has this interesting thing happen where Lonan and Harrison like break up at the end of it, and then Harrison ends up spending I think like 6 months in Las Vegas like by himself. Well, he lives with his mom, but he just spends a lot of time by himself, and I wanted to write about that, so I might write a novella. And I'm talking about this because when I was writing Seventh Virtue yesterday, because I'm in mothwork mode, we're getting religious illusions everywhere. It's like they're everywhere. God is taking over the book right now. I was like, Seventh Virtue isn't a religious book at all. Like, it doesn't sound religious. Like, it doesn't deal with religion, blah, blah, blah. It is called Seventh Virtue. It's based off of the freaking holy virtues, the 7 holy virtues. Duh, religion was gonna show up in my book some way. So that was a funny revelation to make. This is already hard and I haven't even started filming. It's done. I finished the book today. It is March 2nd and my novel Seventh Virtue is done. I started this book when I was 19. I was going through a hard time with my writing and I was going through a hard time in general. I was struggling a lot at the time. You guys wouldn't have known it in a lot of my videos. Like, I looked really happy in 2021, but I was so sad all the time. Then one day I started a book called Seventh Virtue and everything has changed so much and I'm done. It's kind of an awful feeling. As much as I have been saying in all my vlogs and in this vlog, like, I just want to finish this book, I need to finish this book, like, I think a part of me also didn't want to finish this book. Definitely in the last couple of days I have been intentionally not writing it because I didn't want it to end. And it's not like it's over. You guys know me. This is not how I write books. I write books by writing with the same characters in many, many, many different projects. It's not like I had to say goodbye to Harrison forever or Reeve forever. And I have a sequel planned for Seventh Virtue, which the title I'll reveal soon. I can't believe that it's over. I started this in May of 2021. I was such a different writer back then. I couldn't write without feeling terrible. I hated every word that I put on a page. I overthought every word. I was embarrassed by every word, and I was frustrated by writing. I wrote the first 10,000 words of this novel, the first 11,000 actually, in one day, because I needed to change something. And funnily, not to get all sappy on Maine, this is kind of the main conflict in Seventh Virtue, is we get Harrison, who is I have gotten to know so well over the last 2 years, even more than I've already known him because I've been writing with him for nearly 10 years. But in the last 2 years especially, he is in such a hard place at the beginning of Seventh Virtue. He has lost his mother because his mother's gone missing. He never got to say goodbye, so he's struggling with grief in this like weird way, and he doesn't want to change his life. He's resistant to change. He's living the same week of his life over and over and over and over and over again, literally for a year straight, so that he doesn't have to move on with his life. He doesn't want things to change. And then he makes a choice that's really split second and he changes it. And I think this is how I feel about this book. This book changed my life. Really changed my life. I have never felt like this way for a book in a long time than I feel about Seventh Virtue. I love this project. It is a 200,000 word beast. I actually don't know the final word count. I will tell you in a second because I have to transcribe the rest, and I'll kind of talk about how I wrote the end of the book because it's kind of on brand for me. It's very chaotic. This 200,000 word beast slammed into my life, took me by surprise, and has changed everything. I have found joy in writing again, which I never thought I'd feel again at the time of writing this, which, you know, looking back on it, I just want to shake her, the 19-year-old who started this, and be like, you don't even know what you're in for. You're about to write the thing that is going to be everything to you. It's going to be so exciting. Nothing is going to be the same now. I think I have a way different perspective on writing and about creation and about publishing now that I've written this book. It's done. It's done. We're done. It is hard to leave this book. Everything about my life has been Seventh Virtue for 2 years. Obviously, I'm writing the sequel, but I can't be like, I'm writing Seventh Virtue right now, because I'm not. I will be writing something else. It's hard to leave Harrison because the ending was so sad, and I'm literally still writing with him in a different project, which I will talk about. I'm writing a new book, and that's not related to Seventh Virtue. So I'm still writing with him. There's just something about this era. I learned so much about him. I feel like I learned so much about myself, and in that we've had this great experience together. Beginning to end, writing this book was amazing. I struggled at times. There were moments, but it never lasted more than a couple of days. I never felt badly about the book. I never beat myself up over the writing, and I can't even tell you how long it had been since that had happened to me. And so this thing is precious to me. I know that I've always said book 3 of Fostered is my favorite book I've ever written. I think Seventh Virtue might be beating it out. All right, we're on the balcony for our last reading of Seventh Virtue excerpts. Before we get into that, let's kind of talk about how I wrote the end of the book, because it was a bit unexpected. So basically what ended up happening is I hand wrote the end of the book. I can't confirm or deny if I was finishing my book in class. So I just transcribed the entire thing. I wrote about 1,200 words today, and the total word count, thankfully, stayed under 200,000 words. It ended up being about 198,000 words, almost closer. It's like 198,500, basically. So it is my longest book that I've ever written. But you know what? It's been 200,000 words of joy. So let's read the final excerpt. So this is the last couple paragraphs of the book, and these are all first drafts. He cries quietly, and Lonan holds his hair, touches his face, blows softly against his ear. In the window, there are stained glass pane caught in a vivid moment. If Reeve is the wound, Lonan must be the antidote. He has to be. I'm here, Lonan murmurs. His thin fingers careful against Harrison's scalp, the way someone might delicately hold a necklace chain while loosening a tangle. We're here. Lonan's heart is steady, the metronome keeping a harpist in time. Tomorrow will mark not just a new day for Harrison, not just a new start, but a new world. And he'll welcome it. He has to. But for now, he is here, suspended in this room like dust. Lonan's hands on his neck, his face, his back are a new beginning. We're here, graced in each other's arms like trees breaching the sky for each other. They stand like that till the sun turns. And that's the last sentence of Seventh Virtue. There's a lot of like Easter eggs, aka, I call them Easter eggs, but they're also like ways for me to just like recycle my writing because I'm too lazy to think of new things. Quite a few of them here, like the stained glass pane, that's in a project I'm currently working on right now with Harrison in it. If Reeve is the wound, Lonan must be the antidote. There's a line in Mothwork where if Lonan is Venom, he's also the antidote, something like that. He's not Venom here, he's just the antidote. Character development. He's here suspended in this room like dust. I think I've written that line like a bajillion times, to be honest, but I was like, you know what, it works. Trees breaching the sky for each other. I'm pretty sure I've already written that description in Seventh Virtue, but here it is again, repetition and patterning. They stand like that till the sun turns is an iteration off of one of the final lines of a chapter, I think, in Feeding Habits. That marks the end of Seventh Virtue. Thank you to those of you who have been here, whether or not you joined on this vlog or you joined on the first vlog. It has been a magnificent experience, and from 19-year-old Rachel and then from 21-year-old Rachel, this book has just been a life changer, and I couldn't ask for anything else. So thank you guys so much for watching and for following Seventh Virtue's journey. Let's write the sequel, baby! See you guys later. So right now I'm working on a project that is so out of the realm for me. To write a fantasy project, which is a spin-off of a series that I've been working on all the time. You guys already know. I'm working on Fostered, but it's magic. I've named the fantasy book Seventh Virtue. I'm not saying I'm going to finish this book, but I definitely want to write a good chunk of it. This book, like Mothwork and Feeding Habits, follows Harrison because I love him very much. I'm having so much fun, guys. I did it! Oh my god, I did it! No way!